Hold on a second, Miss Sky. You're sure the killer was strangling the victim? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what the killer wanted to do. It even says in the autopsy report that there were signs of strangulation. Yeah, that's what the autopsy report does state. Problem I have is that this is not how the victim actually died. It isn't? Take a look at the autopsy report again, Your Honor. It states that the victim died of a broken neck. Well, that should be normal, right? That's how people die when they are hung, and the murder weapon was a noose. That's just it, Your Honor. The prosecution isn't claiming that the victim was hung. They're claiming he was strangled. Ah, you mean? The evidence isn't pointing to the victim being manually strangled. Whoa! It's pointing to the victim having actually been hung, execution style. Order! This is a rather big thing for the prosecution to overlook. No, I must admit, I'm not entirely sure what the implications of this mean. It's actually very simple, Your Honor. The prosecution's claims, as I understand them, are as follows. The defendant and the victim got in a fight in the defendant's chambers. And during their struggle, the defendant tied the noose around the victim's neck, and then proceeded to strangle him to death. Yes, that does seem to be what the prosecution is claiming. However, we now know that the victim was hung, not manually strangled. And this knowledge changes everything. How so, Mr. Justice? Just think about it, Your Honor. Would the defendant really have the chance to set up a way to hang the victim, while he and the victim were still in the middle of their struggle? That would be quite impossible, I'd say. For Quad is a strong man, but even that would be quite a difficult task for him. And there you have it, Your Honor. As long as the contradiction exists, there is no way the prosecution's theory is possible. You are quite right, Mr. Justice. Mr. Edgeworth, what is your response to this? Finger waggle? Finger waggle. Yeah, there it is. All right. Double finger waggle. Hell yeah. The prosecution sees no contradiction in the detective's testimony. What? Apollo, you really have to pay attention to what people are actually saying. It said the defendant tried to strangle the victim. The key word being tried. Oh. I knew it. I knew I was walking into a trap. Let me ask you, Mr. Justice. Why do you think that hung people die from broken necks? Why? Well, I think it's because a great amount of force is put on the neck and all of a sudden... Ah! No way! I see that you've finally realized it. There are two important factors to explain this discrepancy. First is what I'm sure you're no doubt aware of. The defendant's size and strength. It goes without saying that her quadri is a rather large man. With strength would easily be enough to put that kind of force on the victim's neck. And the second factor. The second factor is that the defendant and the victim were in the middle of a struggle. Rather one-sided struggle at that. I see. If the defendant's strength combined with the victim's struggles... Bingo! We would assume that the victim made sudden, jerky movements to try and escape. Combined with the fact that he was still dazed from the fight itself. Well, let's just say it didn't end well for him. Whether Qualari's attempts to strangle the victim were done, try and kill the victim, or merely incapacitate him, the fact remains that the victim was struggling with him as the noose was tied around his neck. At that moment, Corey Rupture's fate was sealed. The victim challenging the defendant's strength while the noose was around his neck, resulting in his neck suddenly being broken, ending his life instantly. Ah! Most bruises on his back extremities, one large cranial bruise. Signs of pre-mortem strangling. Okay, it's vague enough that this works. My granddaughter, it seems, Justice, that the prosecution's claims are reasonable after all. Unfortunately, I cannot let your objection stand. No, I thought I had something right there. Edgeworth already had a way to counter it. Pull yourself together, Apollo. You can't just give this up now. Not while it's the only chance you have. Hold on, just 1 second, Mr. Edgeworth. You've yet to prove that my client is even capable of such a feat. For all you know, he might not actually be as strong as you think he is.
Objection!
Even you must admit that such an argument is pointless banter, Mr. Justice. Well, he's not wrong. I just need an excuse to keep this trial going. However, if the defense is so keen on arguing this point, the prosecution can call a witness to put this matter to bed once and for all. Hey, a witness? This can't be good. Detective Sky, you may now leave the stand. We expect that recommendation to the chief of police after this. Yes, thank you, Mr. Edgeworth. I promise you I won't waste this opportunity. And there she goes. Here's to hoping for the best, Emma. Now then, Mr. Edgeworth, who is this witness of yours? There's only one man capable of putting the rest of the question at hand. It's Airy himself. Only one man who can truly confirm that the defendant is truly strong enough to do this deed. That man is, of course, Larry himself. The defendant is your witness? Oh boy. Well, alright. Let's see where this is going. Hold on, everyone, calm down. Mr. Edgeworth, I cannot say I am too sure about this. Even if the defendant has no obligation to testify against himself. That is true, Your Honor. However, he's the only man capable of telling us what really happened that day. This court has an obligation to hear his side of the story, if he is willing to give it. As this is a jury trial, not speaking has its implications too, whether we want it or not. I don't like where Edgeworth is going with this. I can use my client's own words against him to prove his case. The choice is yours, counsel. Will you hear out her Levy's testimony? Think about this long and carefully. Should I let my client take the stand? Sure. As a lawyer, I took an oath to pursue the truth. It's an oath I can't go back on. Not now, not ever. Judge Airy's testimony might be the only chance I have at getting to the bottom of this case. Can't refuse that now. The defense accepts the prosecution's request on one condition. What would that condition be, counsel? If my client, Airy, refuses to testify and decides to plead the fifth, the prosecution must concede that there is no way to prove that the defendant is strong enough to have committed the crime as the prosecution described it. What? Power move? I see. I've seen many people try to pull that kind of deal. Many of them prosecutors. It's not often I see a defense attorney use that kind of trick. Very well, then. The prosecution accepts these terms. Very well. This court recognizes the deal made between the defense and prosecution. The defendant, Larry, take the stand. That's an interesting power move on Apollo's part. If Judge Airy refuses to testify, that could be enough to win me the case. If he does testify, he could give us new information that could turn things around. See, if we acknowledge that as a Gavin trick, that's more of the neat little foibles to Apollo's character that would distinguish him from Phoenix. I like that. Will the defendant please state his name and occupation for the record? Herqual Airy, presiding judge of courtroom number 1. You do understand the situation, right, Judge Erie? This court will not look down on you for refusing to testify. The decision is yours. A man was killed in my good friend's chambers, Your Honor. I never met the victim in court. I did not personally know him. However, I do know this. He did not deserve to die. My testimony can truly get to the bottom of what happened. I will testify. Besides, I'm confident in my innocence and my lawyer's abilities. Oh dear. Well, Judge Erie, we gave up the easy win for the pursuit of the truth. Can only hope it's worth it. Very well then, Judge Erie. Let us hear your side of the story. Please explain to us what happened that day. From your point of view. Very well. Oh. On the day of the murder, I was in my chambers, busy filing some paperwork. With the trial ending early, I was looking forward to having some extra free time to get work done. Suddenly a loud thump came from the neighboring judge's chambers. I quickly jumped to my feet and made my way to the bookcase past it, stepping through. That's when I saw the victim on the floor, dead, and I screamed for help. See, thank you for your testimony, Judge Erie. We haven't really touched, like, the whole point of doing this? The whole, is he strong enough to do it? But we can overlook that. Though I'm curious to ask how this changes matters. The prosecution still holds true to their claim that the defendant has enough strength to break the defendant's neck during their struggles. Somewhere within the cross-examination, I believe the truth will come to light. Yeah, so somewhere there has to be some indication of if the defendant is actually strong. I can only hope the answer will help guide us to the real truth. You realize, of course, that if the cross-examination reveals that the defendant is not actually as strong as the prosecution claims he is, this could be the end of your case, understood? I am willing to accept the risk, Your Honor. This could just as easily transition into, which I think it's going to transition into, some kind of rigging used to create the hanging scenario. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We say it's almost like we've built up the goodwill that we will get there when we get there. The case against Judge Erie still holds water unless I can prove my point anyway. Edgeworth and I are both taking a risk on this testimony. I only hope that what I find won't further damage my case. Around what time did you enter your chambers? It doesn't take long to travel between my courtroom and the high chambers. I wasn't exactly paying attention to the time I entered my chambers. It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes after I declared a verdict that day. The trial ended at 12:25. That means he was in his chambers by 12:30. In other words, he was in his chambers around the time of the murder. Waggle, waggle, waggle. I see the defense has reached the same conclusion that I have. I'm sure we're well aware that when the defendant has described very much fits into the time frame of the murder. In other words, the defendant lacks an alibi. Indeed. That's something that has been well established by this point. This testimony as all but confirms it. I'm not going to lie and say I wasn't there. All I can do is continue to maintain my innocence. It's true that I was in my chambers around the time the crime was committed. However, I did not see court eruption that day until after he was already dead. If you wish to prove otherwise, then the burden is on you, Mr. Edgeworth. I am well aware of the situation, Judge Erie. However, you were the only one with access to the scene of the crime at the time of the murder. That, in and of itself, is rather damning evidence.
Objection!
Hang on, Mr. Edgeworth. There's one problem with that line of logic. The defendant never saw a core eruption that day until after he was already dead. Can you prove that? How did the victim get into the crime scene that day if there was no other way to get in?
Objection!
Okay, fair. I hope your argument isn't solely reliant on the defendant's word, Mr. Justice. There was a perfectly reasonable explanation for how the victim got into the crime scene. Of course, his body was dragged there by that defendant after the murder.
Objection!
Oh! I've already told you I never saw the victim that day. Why did none of you listen to me? Order! Judge Erie, control your outbursts. The prosecution has already provided solid evidence for their case. If the defense wishes to overturn that case, they will need evidence of their own. Evidence that I lack, of course. Just calm yourself, Judge Erie, and give your testimony. There will be no need to worry if you are telling this court the truth. Just to reiterate, the trial was over with so quickly because the victim was the defense assigned to the case, yet he never showed up to the trial. What exactly was going on in your thoughts when this happened? Well, I was obviously not very pleased with Mr. Upshur, that's for sure. When you are chosen to represent a person in court, it's a tremendous duty. The person is taking a risk by putting their life in your hands. Quite an important responsibility. Not just something you can go back on whenever you please. Indeed, your anger is quite understandable, Judge Erie. To shirk one's responsibilities like that is rather unacceptable. Of course, that's exactly what Mr. Upshur did. For seeing the body, however, my attitude changed. Suddenly, everything that happened that day started to make sense. I realized that had to be the reason why he never showed up to court.
Objection!
Have you already forgotten, Judge Erie? There's already been evidence presented to the court that disproves what you're saying. Right, the autopsy report. Precisely. The autopsy report states that the victim died at least 5 minutes after the end of the trial. In other words, the reason the victim didn't show up is not because he was dead. Don't know anything about his real reasons for abandoning his client. All I know is what was going on in my mind at the time. If I turned out to be wrong, then he better have had a damn good reason for what he did. Mr. Upshur's reason for not appearing in court that day. It's not because of his death, and I have no idea what the real reason is. Still, I can't shake the feeling that there's something more to this story. Did Corey Upshur really abandon his client on the day of the murder? Or was there something else that caused it? Anyway, let us return to our attention to the defendant's testimony. What happened while you were in your office, Judge Erie?
Hold it!
Loud thump. What exactly was this thump you heard? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe it was aliens, or ghosts, or zombies. Oh god. Yeah, I was waiting for that one. It's not still in the courthouse, is it? What if it comes this way? I don't know what to be eaten by zombies, Mr. Justice. Judge Erie, please calm down. Whatever it is you heard, I'm sure there's a perfectly logical explanation for it. But what that explanation is, I'm not quite sure. Judge Erie, I'm well aware of your beliefs. However, I must agree with what the defense is saying. The sound you heard could have been caused by any number of things. Perhaps even one's own mind.
Objection!
If you're implying that I'm going crazy, then you can forget it. I know what I heard that day was real. It was merely a suggestion, of course. At this rate, a very likely suggestion. I know what I heard. I'm not going senile. Tell them, Mr. Justice. Tell them what I heard that day. Wait, I don't know the answer to that one either. It seems we are right back where we started. We are still none the wiser about what the sound the defendant heard that day was. But no, that was a complete waste of time. Still, I don't think I'll be able to get my client off the hook until I know what he heard. Which at this rate could just turn out to be that a mouse knocked over a book. In any case, I suggest we return to the matter at hand. Judge Erie, what did you do after you heard the loud thud from the crime scene?
Hold it!
Have you used the passageway before, Judge Erie? I can't say I've ever really had need of it before. That said, I did test it out before once, when I first became a judge. It was when I was first learning how it actually worked. Oh? Now you got me curious. How exactly does the bookcase passageway work? Ah, well, it's actually quite simple, young Justice. There's a button near the top that unlatches the lock. From there, you're free to pull it open. That's actually very simple. Indeed, the biggest challenge in using the bookcase passage is simply knowing it's there. Well, knowing that, I thought anybody could have entered the crime scene that day. Really? Please explain, defense. Consider the following, Your Honor. We still don't know how the killer and victim got inside the crime scene that day. When the defendant entered the room, the victim was already dead. Meaning he had already entered the room by that time.
Objection!
Unfortunately, I cannot let that claim slide. Edgeworth, I should have known he had an objection ready. Understand correctly, the defense is claiming the following. That the victim was already inside the neighboring chambers when the crime was committed, and that he entered through the bookcase passageway to do so. Unfortunately, there is a gaping hole in that defense's theory. I assume you mean that there was no opportunity to do so. Precisely. I say, compared to other things I might have gotten angry over, there's nothing egregiously wrong here. Like, it's clear that the flaw in Edgeworth's case that he can't answer is the Edgeworth case makes sense even if it doesn't to us. We have to prove that Rupture was in the judge's chambers, died there, got there before his trial, so he missed his trial. And figure out how he got in. That's the challenge at hand here. Well, Edgeworth gets around that by saying, obviously, Judge Erie killed him and took him through the secret passage. Simple enough. And if it's clearly wrong, it makes enough sense to get by. Recall the events that played out that day. The defendant oversaw a trial on the day of the murder. This trial ended at 12:55 p.m., after which the defendant returned to his chambers. The earliest point at which the murder occurred was at 12:30 p.m. In other words, there was no opportunity to sneak into the neighboring chambers at all. The only way the victim could have entered the chambers was if he was brought in by Judge Erie. Yeah! Order! Order! Can't keep up this line of reasoning. To prove the victim entered through the bookcase passage, but I don't think I have enough information to make it work. I may need to revisit this point later on once I've gathered the necessary clues. Now then, let's return to the matter at hand. Judge Erie, what did you find when you went through the bookcase passage?
Hold it!
The victim was already dead when he entered the room. Yeah, there was no mistaking it. I didn't bother trying to check his pulse. I just screamed as loud as I could. Mr. Edgeworth and the others soon came and confirmed it. And of course, the autopsy report confirms the victim died instantly. So if he really didn't touch the body, the crime had to have happened before he entered. Of course, we only have the defendant's word to go off of. There is no evidence to back up what he is saying. He's right, of course. I believe Judge Erie's account of the events. What I lack is evidence. Not to mention there is a hole in the defendant's explanation. A hole? Let's assume for the sake of argument that the defendant's account is true. There's something he should have heard that he did not. I mean, the moment of the murder. The defendant would have been right next to the crime scene at the time of the murder. He should have heard the fight between the killer and the victim. Yet he does not claim to have heard any such thing. I wish I knew what to tell you. It's true, I did not hear a fight going on next door. Trust me, that part has me just as stumped as you guys. Fight between the killer and the victim. He should have heard, but didn't. The mystery just goes deeper and deeper. I'm not going to lie just to make my story sound more credible. But to be honest, when there's something I'm not sure how to explain, figuring out how it makes sense is your job, Mr. Justice. And the police. Don't forget them. In any event, this point stands. The defendant can't explain the holes in his testimony. Till those holes are addressed, suspicion will still remain upon him. The problem with Judge Erie's testimony is fairly obvious, I feel. He seems to have not seen the victim at all that day. And yet, the only way for the victim to get to the crime scene was through his chambers. If the defendant was in his chambers, he should have seen the victim at some point. And yet, he still sticks to his guns. If I had more clues, I could try to explain away this inconsistency. Times like these, maybe I should see what the jury has to say. Ooh, alright. If you provide me with more clues, I can press the issue further. You should look through the court record to see what they are experts in. I'm sure one of them could use their expertise in one of these statements. Alright. I want to do like a mega compilation of all the jury polling we can do at the end of this, but it seems like we have to do... It makes sense, obviously, that we're introducing this system, we'd have to do it to advance the story here. Your Honor, I would like to hear what the jury thinks about this statement. Very well, Mr. Wright, if you would, please. Your thing, Your Honor. What do you guys think? Bah! Why did you immediately jump to using the bookcase passage? Look, I panicked, okay? I heard a loud noise, and then I became concerned about Hutchie. That he fell over and couldn't get up, or that ghost had gotten to him. I think you needn't worry about that second one. You still could have knocked on the door to make sure. But your first thought was to invade his privacy. For shame! Indeed. That was your first thought. But your first thought was the bookcase passage is rather peculiar. It was almost as if you knew the main doors would be locked. That's not it at all. Don't look at me like that. Mr. Edgeworth, I must ask you to stop making my client uncomfortable. If he could stand to stop acting so suspicious. My apologies. However, I still believe this question merits an answer. I wasn't concerned with anything else in that moment. What do you mean? Archie is the one person who really takes me seriously anymore. He truly is the only friend I have left, I think. The only thing going on in my mind is how to reach him as fast as possible. It never even occurred to me that I might be infringing on his privacy. So you don't care about your friend's privacy, is that it? No offense, Juror 2, but I'd argue the fact that there had been a murder takes precedent. Oh, so just because a guy died, that means we have to throw out all decency, huh? How'd you like it if I stuck into your house during a murder, huh? That depends on if the guy was literally dying on my floor. I think it might be in everyone's best interest to end this line of questioning and reprimand Juror number 2 for being a fucking asshole. Please do, Your Honor. Yes, well. Judge Erie, please describe what you saw in my brother's chambers. Your Honor, I would like to hear what the jury thinks. Yep. Everything? What do you guys think? If I may ask, what kind of work were you doing with your free time, Judge Erie? Oh, well, not every part of a judge's duty is spent in the courtroom. Whenever a trial wraps up, we must also do the appropriate paperwork regarding the trial's verdict and sentence. However, sometimes that paperwork can pile up far too quickly to handle. If I may be so bold, I would suggest keeping up with your work better, Judge Erie. Poor Judge Erie. He really is the least popular judge. Well, I'm just imagining all that paperwork piling up. What a nightmare. Now then, pay attention, you big baby. Hold on. If you have to do paperwork every time a trial gets concluded, wouldn't that mean you'd have to do paperwork about the trial that concluded that morning? Hey, that's right. The defendant really did file the paperwork for that day's trial. It would be proof to my client is telling the truth. So what? The guy was filing paperwork. What does that prove? Let me think about it for 1 second. If my client was filing paperwork that morning, he'd be too busy to go and commit murder. I mean, the murder came to him, but... So I'd imagine typing up that paperwork would take a long while. Not to mention paperwork about that day's trial would prove when he did it, too. In other words, that paperwork could give my client a solid alibi for the crime. Objection! Nice try, but no. Though I do not wish to indulge in the defense's blatant grasping at straws, I must interrupt. The prosecution has already looked into this matter. They found no paperwork of that kind on the defendant's desk. Oh dear. Huh? Sorry, son. I was waiting to hear from Rupture before I started on that paperwork. First wanted to hear from him why he never showed up to court that day. Of course, now that now we'll never know the reason. Damn, I thought I had something. Naturally, the prosecution has been very thorough about searching into this matter. If there was even a slim chance of something leading to the defendant having an alibi, he would have definitely discovered it. Wow, I've heard so much about Mr. Edgeworth's talents. But to actually see them in action? He He still doesn't hold a candle to how dreamy Aiden is. I don't know, I think they're both pretty cool. I'd love to see them duke it out one day. That would be a completely one-sided battle. Oh dear. I kinda agree, but not for the reason you'd think. With this matter fully explored, let's return to the testimony. You were in your chambers at the time of the murder. What happened next? Let's poll the jury. Your Honor. Alright, to the jury. Righto. Well, that settles it, doesn't it? Is at the crime scene at the time of the murder. Where else would it be? Well, hang on a bit. There seems to be a bit more to the story, I think. Juror 6? Juror 6? No, you're juror 2. Don't tell me you believe the defendant was actually doing paperwork at the time. Big meeting with the victim. You're not seriously going to take his word for it, are you? Yeah, it is a bit strange that Juror 4 would buy his paperwork explanation with no proof. Juror 4, you seem to be willing to accept the idea that the defendant really was doing paperwork at the time. Well, I have good reason to believe him. Reading the information about you in the court record, it seems as though you work here at the courthouse. Does that have something to do with the reason you trust the defendant? Actually, yes. That is the reason. I've read through some of Judge Erie's reports before. Handwriting can be a bit scraggly, but he's usually good at getting them in on time. Sorry about the handwriting. I tend to rush when there's too much paperwork to be done. In any case, Judge Erie doing paperwork after the trial does sound like a reasonable excuse. In which case, he didn't have time to meet up with the victim. Poppycock. How did the victim get into the crime scene? Juror 2 is quite right. Mr. Upshur would have had to enter the crime scene through the bookcase passage. There's no way he could have done that without attracting the defendant's attention. Well, maybe he really did find a way to go through the front door. Would be the most logical assumption. Whoa! Unfortunately, that's an impossibility. It's standard protocol for judges to lock their chambers when they're not using them. I don't think Udgy would just forget about this when he went to the trial. Indeed, I can assure you that the door was still locked when we arrived at the scene. In fact, His Honor fumbled with his keys for a bit to get the door open. That does sound like my brother. There was no way to enter the room through the front door. The only way to enter the room was through other means. Indeed, Udgy wouldn't make a mistake like forgetting to lock the door. Especially because, unlike me, he doesn't really have an excuse. So we really do have a locked room mystery on our hands. How exciting! Oh dear. Well, you can already call it a mystery when the answer has already been given to you, huh? The only one with access to the crime scene was the defendant. That's all she wrote. I wonder if that's really true. I can't help but feel like somebody said something just now that bugged me. What do I do? Should I raise an objection? Sure. Judge Erie. Huh? Why are you staring at me like that? I can't help but feel like something you said just now was very odd. Unlike me, he doesn't really have an excuse. Oh? Unlike me, he doesn't really have an excuse. What exactly is this excuse you're talking about? Well, it's a bit embarrassing, really. It's what happened a week ago, you see. I was trying to get into my chambers, and my key was being finicky. I jiggled it up and down, and struggled with hitting the doorknob for a bit, and, well, I sort of ended up ripping the door open by accident. You what? Yeah, it really did a number on the lock, too. I really didn't know my own strength sometimes. Uh-oh, there we go. Looks like we have to get the lock replaced. Well, if that's true, then... Well, really, this puts one question to rest, at least. The defense stated earlier that the defendant was strong enough to have been able to snap the victim's neck by strangling him with a rope. However, for the testimony we've just heard, the defendant does indeed have that strength. Yeah, we kind of backed ourselves into that corner. In other words, the prosecution's theory is not out of the realm of possibility. Order! I can't believe I fell right into that one. Think a way to turn this around quick. I may have learned new information, but so did I. The past week, the lock on the door to the defendant's chambers has been broken. I wonder if there's any way I could use this new info. In case, with the prosecution's point thoroughly proven, let's just return to the cross-examination. I like that stern Edgeworth point. What was the statement that we needed? What was the statement that we needed? Clue 1 was in this one? Why'd you jump to the passageway? Anyway, we can enter the crime scene that day. Inside the crime scene, the defendant entered the room. The creator was already dead, meaning he already entered the room by that time. Okay, unfortunately, I cannot let that claim slide. Yep. Okay, that's the point where he objected. If I understand correctly, the defense is claiming the following. Already inside, into the bookcase passageway to do so. This is giving hold that theory. No opportunity. Precisely. Could very well be that rupture snuck into Judge's office to get into the downstairs library. All the events that played out that day. Do-do-do. Order. Okay, that's line freezing. The bookcase passage, but... Ah, wait a minute. That clue I gathered from before, I wonder if that word would be useful here. Press further. Hold on, just 1 second, Mr. Edgeworth. One big thing you seem to have forgotten. Something I've forgotten. There was something said during the cross-examination that will explain what I mean. Please, pay attention to what the defendant said earlier. It sort of happened a week ago, you see. I was trying to get into my chambers and my key was being finicky. I jiggled and struggled in the doorknob for a bit, and, well, I sort of ended up ripping the door open by accident. Powerful. You what? Yeah, it really did a number on the lock, too. I really don't know my own strength sometimes. I still have yet to get the lock replaced. And this one little detail changes everything. How so, defense? The prosecution claimed that the victim had no opportunity to sneak into the crime scene. However, we now know that's not true. The perfect opportunity had already presented itself. An opportunity that the defendant himself created. What? Me? Eerie, chill. This is good for you. Order. Your argument intrigues me, Mr. Justice. Please elaborate. Of course, Your Honor. Let's consider the facts. A week ago, the defendant broke the lock on his doors by accident. Yeah, that was rather clumsy of me. The important part is the implications this creates. The lock still has yet to be replaced. It means anyone could have entered the defendant's chambers on that day. Ah, I think I see where you're going with this. From there, they could have used the bookcase passage to enter the crime scene. Precisely, Your Honor. I believe this is how the victim entered the crime scene that day. On that day, the victim did not show up to court to defend his client. The real reason why is because he was already in the crime scene at that day. He snuck into the defendant's chambers at some point during the trial. Then he entered through the bookcase passage to the neighboring chambers. In other words, it's entirely plausible for my client to have not met the victim of that day. Suppose that makes sense. But why would Rupture do such a thing? What was he trying to accomplish, sneaking into Edgy's room like that? Admittedly, I don't know the answer to that either. However, the real question is now about proof. What do you mean? The victim really did enter through the bookcase passage. It's entirely possible he might have left behind some evidence of what he did. Judge Erie, do you recall anything out of the ordinary about the bookcase that day? Was the passage already open by the time you used it? I don't remember. Everything that happened until after I heard that thud is just kind of a blur. I can't actually remember many details about what happened next. If there was just some way to jog his memory. Objection! Uh-oh. Are you quite done? Totally forgot about Edgeworth. Mr. Edgeworth, do you have a problem with the idea the defense has proposed? Clearly, Your Honor. That's why I said objection. Naturally, Your Honor. Where's he going with this? The defense's claim is that the victim entered the defendant's chambers while the trial was still in session that day, and that he used the bookcase passage to enter the crime scene. The problem is, of course, that he lacks a way to prove it. But if the passage was open at the time, then... Unfortunately, Mr. Justice, I can say with confidence that the passage was closed. What? Let me ask you something, Mr. Justice. How closely did you examine the bookcase passage during your investigation? How closely? You know, now that I think about it... About it... I didn't really examine it all that much. Your silence speaks volumes. Oh no! If you had actually bothered to look at the bookcase in any great detail, you'd have noticed that the bookcase has been torn off its hinges. What? An interesting detail. The court record shall be updated with this information immediately. I'm sorry, what? Are you... what? What exactly does this prove? Oh, God. It's very simple, Your Honor. There's only one man in this case capable of ripping the bookcase off its hinges. One man who, in his testimony, proved he had the strength to do so. When he broke the lock on his own door. You mean? Naturally, I refer to Hercule. Now then, I ask you, why would he need to rip the hinges off it if the passage was open? He wouldn't. That's correct, Your Honor. We know for a fact that the passage was closed when the defendant used it now. There's no proof that anybody used the passage that day. Except for one person. That person is the defendant, Hercule. No! Alright. Alright. Order, I say. Listen, he present a problem for the defendant's case. The fact that we didn't realize that the defendant was the fucking Hulk. This is bad. This is really bad. I have to be on the right track, but Edgeworth is making me doubt my own case. What do? Do I try to fight this? Yeah, give in. I know I'm right about this. I just know it. The victim had to have entered through the passageway before the defendant arrived. But I don't have the evidence to dispute it. There's one other thing that the broken door hinges does prove. The defendant must have opened the passageway in a hurry. Indeed. Otherwise, the defendant would have just opened it the normal way. Precisely, Your Honor. There's only one reason why the defendant would be in such a hurry at all. Oh no. I think I know what that is. I know what that is. Actually, he was in a hurry to hide the body. I think in this case points to the defendant. Everyone who entered this courthouse that day has an airtight alibi. All except for one person. For qual ere, it could only have been you. No! I believe at long last, defense and prosecution have no more arguments to make. I believe it. Is this really it? I'm trying my hardest, but can't think of anything else to say. The jury decides on the verdict now. Judge Erie is sure to be found guilty. Before I move to the verdict, I must ask one last time. Do the defense and prosecution have anything else to add? Prosecution has nothing left to say, Your Honor. Very well. And the defense? Justice, think of something. Your Honor, the defense.
Objection.
Ah! Oh, please wait just a moment, Your Honor. I have something to say. Judge Jimmy, please control your outbursts. And please, Your Honor, just listen to me. I know who it is. You know who what is? Who else? The murderer. I know who murdered Coy Rupture. You... No. What? Well, we've already heard this story. I suppose we'll be curious to see the reaction to this in court. Judge Erie, this is a serious claim you're making. Why'd you not tell the court about this sooner? I didn't think anyone would believe me, Your Honor. But I can't stay silent. Now my life is on the line. This is preposterous. You can expect us to believe.
Objection!
Mr. Edgeworth, it's our job to hear out every witness, no matter what. My client must be allowed to speak.
Objection!
Mr. Justice, surely you already know what he's going to say. I'd like to make a mockery of this courtroom. Wait, does Edgeworth already know who he's going to indict? I have a bad feeling about this. Edgeworth clearly doesn't want him to speak, though, which is intriguing. Objection overruled, Mr. Edgeworth. That is correct. It is our duty to hear out every witness. Jerry, you will give your testimony to this court at once. Yeah, yep. Just gonna sit here and let him stew for a bit. For about a week, I've been hearing strange noises coming from Udge's chambers. Noises happen late in the night, long after Udge has been already left the building. There's no explanation. Must be the ghost that haunts the halls of this courthouse. I hired a paranormal investigator to search that room, but even he doesn't believe me. I was worried that ghosts got Udge. That's why I was in such a hurry to open the passage. We might get something interesting out of this after all. Not what we expected, but... What? Why isn't anyone saying anything? Well, now I know why Edgeworth was able to predict who you would indict. In all truth, I probably should have seen it coming too.
Objection!
Your Honor, this man is making a mockery of this court. To go so far as to indict a ghost. Indeed, it is rather ridiculous. I'm telling you, boy, ghosts did this crime, I know it. Why would anyone believe me?
Objection!
Could it possibly be because you're stark raving mad? Your Honor, I demand that this testimony be stricken from the record. Mr. Justice, what are your thoughts? It's true that Judge Erie's testimony has more holes than Swiss cheese. But I can't just give up. This could be my last chance. Your Honor, the defense asserts its right to a cross-examination. Its testimony is just as valid as any other. Mr. Justice, please don't feed into this man's delusions. Too late. The defense means to assert its right to a cross-examination, then we must oblige. Though I cannot say I envy you, Mr. Justice. This is my last chance. Gotta find something useful in that testimony. Really gotta dig deep to find the truth. We're getting somewhere. We're seeing hints of something going on here. We got someone. We know there's the fireplace passage which leads to an underground library. We know there's signs of someone poking around underground. We now know that there were regularly signs of someone scuffing around in there late at night. It's the ghost. We now know that sorry, white screen jump scare. We doors unlocked so someone could get in. The whole week time frame of someone breaking in to Judge's chambers, someone poking around in Judge's chambers, time into the lock being broken. Ends up that there's could very much be someone poking around underground. And that's what he's hearing. Still doesn't answer any questions regarding the murder, but we're getting somewhere, maybe. Possibly. We have to get through this first.